What would you do if heaven itself decided the world should end? If every mountain began to tremble, every ocean started to rise, and the stars dimmed like dying embers in a blackened sky? What if all of creation knew its time had come? The angels gathered at the edges of the earth, waiting for the command that would end everything. And then, silence. A silence so heavy, it pressed against the soul of heaven itself. Because this was it. The moment when God's patience reached its limit. The moment when grace would finally give way to justice. But what if, in that silence, one angel stepped forward? What if, as the heavens prepared to unravel, one voice, trembling but brave, whispered, "Not yet"? What kind of love makes an angel stand between God's wrath and the world he's ready to destroy? What kind of mercy dares to stop the end of time itself? This is not a story about rebellion. It's a story about love strong enough to face divine fire, about an angel who looked at the brokenness of humanity and still saw something worth saving. Because what if mercy, just once, was stronger than judgment? You're watching Bible Mysteries, where we uncover the hidden stories the Bible never fully tells. If you love stories that stir your heart and awaken your spirit, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss another revelation. This is the story of the angel who stopped the apocalypse. It began with silence, not peace, but the kind of silence that comes before a storm, the kind that makes even heaven uneasy. The angels knew what that silence meant. It was the pause between mercy and judgment, the breath before the end. For centuries, humanity had been warned. The day will come when the earth trembles and the heavens pass away like smoke. And now, that day had come. Across the vast reaches of the cosmos, the throne of God blazed brighter than 1,000 suns. From that light, 4 angels stepped forward, each holding what Scripture called the 4 winds of the earth. Winds that could unmake oceans, level mountains, and snuff out the sky itself. The command had been given. Creation would be undone. But then, from the east, a different light began to rise. Softer, warmer, not like lightning or fire, but like the dawn after a night that lasted too long. Every angel turned toward it. And there, walking through the glow, came another messenger. He carried no weapon. In his hand was not a trumpet of destruction, but a seal, a mark said to belong to the living God himself. And in that instant, all of heaven stopped. He raised his voice, not with command, but with compassion. His words trembled, yet they carried through eternity. Do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, not until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And suddenly, the winds paused. The world stood still. The fire that was meant to fall froze above the clouds. It was as though mercy had wrapped its arms around the apocalypse and whispered, "Wait." Heaven held its breath. The other angels, mighty beings who obeyed the Creator's every word, looked at him in shock. For in all of creation's history, no angel had ever spoken against the moment decreed. But this one did. And though he was unnamed in the scrolls of men, heaven remembered him that day, for he stood between the will of judgment and the cry of mercy. Some say it was Michael, the protector of souls. Others whisper it was Raphael, the healer who carried the light of compassion itself. But perhaps he was neither. Perhaps he was an angel so deeply in tune with the heart of God that when he saw the end begin, he felt not power, but pain. Because how could he destroy what God once called good? How could he lift his hand against a world that still sang faintly of its Creator's love? Maybe in that moment, he remembered the children who prayed, though no one listened. The mother who whispered forgiveness, though her heart was broken. The man who knelt in the dust and begged heaven for mercy one last time. And maybe that was enough. Enough to make him stand against destiny itself. Enough to make him face the gaze of heaven and say, "They are not ready. Give them time." And heaven listened. Because sometimes mercy needs a voice, and that day it found one in him. The skies remained dark but unmoving. The 4 angels who held the winds looked at one another, conflicted, They had never disobeyed, but something about his word felt right. It was as if compassion itself had spoken through him, and even the fire paused to hear. Have you ever felt that way? Like the world was on the edge of ending, your own world falling apart, and you prayed, God, please, not yet. Maybe in ways we'll never fully understand, it was this same angel who heard you. Maybe it was his hand that held the storm back just long enough for grace to find you. He was not powerful because of his strength. He was powerful because of his mercy. And though the other angels waited for God's final command, the voice of the Almighty did not thunder this time. Instead, there was silence, a deep, reverent silence, as if God himself was watching the angel who dared to show his own heart and found no fault in him. Because maybe that was the hidden will of heaven all along, not to destroy, but to see if any among them would remember compassion. And that day one did. But mercy has a price, and standing between wrath and redemption would not be without consequence. Because when an angel halts the end of the world, the weight of both heaven and earth falls upon him, and the heavens were not done shaking yet. He had done it. The winds stopped, the fire withdrew, and all of heaven was still. For the first time since creation began, an angel had interrupted the command of God. And though his voice had been gentle, the weight of what he'd done was thunder. Because in the courts of heaven, obedience was not just expected, it was sacred. Every being turned toward him, wings folded, light dimmed. The very foundations of paradise trembled with a single question. What have you done? He stood there trembling, not in pride, but in sorrow. He could feel their eyes, countless angels whose glory burned like suns, staring into him. He had not meant to defy. He had only meant to protect. He whispered again, barely audible, not yet. And somewhere in the eternal silence, a voice answered. Who are you, it said, to stand before the judgment of God? It was not anger. It was grief. The same grief that fills a parent's heart when a child acts out of love, but at the wrong time. The angel bowed his head, his heart heavy. I am no one, he said quietly, but I have seen their tears. I have heard their prayers, and even now, they still cry out to you. He paused, then lifted his gaze toward the throne's unseen light. Shouldn't love wait until every last one has been given the chance to return? And heaven fell silent again. Around him, the angels of the wind stood motionless, torn between duty and compassion. They had seen what he saw. They too had watched humanity stumble through darkness. But they had also watched humanity fight to rise again. Maybe that was why even they did not move. Even they could not bring themselves to begin the destruction again, because his words carried truth. And then the sky broke open. A radiance unlike anything creation had ever seen filled the heavens. So bright, the stars themselves seemed to kneel. The angel fell to his knees. He did not look up, for he could not bear the weight of that light. And the voice of God filled the heavens. It was not loud, but it reached every soul in existence. My will is mercy, the voice said, but mercy has a time. You have delayed what must come. The angel trembled. Tears fell from eyes made of light. Then I have sinned, he whispered, and I will bear it. But the voice continued, gentle, almost sorrowful. You have not sinned, for even in judgment I seek compassion, and you have remembered what so many have forgotten. Then the light dimmed, the storm faded, and heaven exhaled. The angel remained kneeling. He did not feel triumphant. He felt small, as if he had touched something too great to understand, a love that burned brighter than fire. Around him, the other angels lowered their heads. Even they could feel it now, the shift in heaven's heartbeat. Destruction would still come one day, but not yet, because of him, because one angel dared to remember that mercy was the first language of God. Have you ever done something that cost you everything, simply because it felt right? Because love left you no other choice? That's what this angel did. He wasn't stronger than the storm. He simply refused to let go of hope. And heaven, for the first time, Listen to the voice of compassion instead of command. But peace never lasts long, because the forces that crave destruction do not rest. And when the end was delayed, something dark awoke beneath creation's shadow, a voice that could not accept mercy's triumph. The angel had stopped the apocalypse, but in doing so, he had awakened the one who wanted it most. The world was still. The winds rested. The fire that had once burned across the heavens cooled to a silent glow. The angel stood at the edge of creation, watching the earth breathe again, a planet spared by a whisper of mercy. He thought, maybe this was peace. Maybe heaven had forgiven his daring act. Maybe, for a while, grace had truly triumphed over judgment. But peace in heaven and on earth rarely lasts long, because mercy awakens what evil tries to forget. And in the shadows beneath creation, in the place where light never falls, something began to stir. A voice, ancient, bitter, a voice that once sang among the stars, before pride turned it into venom. It whispered through the darkness. He stopped it? He delayed the end? The silence that followed trembled with rage. You fool, the voice snarled. You've undone the order of heaven itself. You've cheated the fire. You've denied the throne its justice. From the heart of that darkness, Lucifer rose, the morning star, no longer radiant, no longer beloved, but cold, hollow, burning with jealousy for what he could never reclaim. He had waited ages for the end of all things. He wanted to see creation collapse, not just out of hatred for man, but because the end would prove him right. If humanity could fall again and again, if angels themselves could falter, then surely even God's mercy would eventually fail. But this angel, this nameless messenger, had ruined it. He had stopped the apocalypse. He had proven that mercy could still win. And to Lucifer, that was the greatest insult of all. The fallen hosts stirred in the abyss, their chains rattling like the echo of storms long past. Their whispers turned to curses, their eyes, and cold and burning, turned toward heaven's light. And at the center of them all, Lucifer spoke again, his voice dripping with poison and sorrow intertwined. You cannot stop what has already been written. He delayed the end, but he has also marked himself for it. Because mercy may delay judgment, but it cannot erase it. Meanwhile, the angel stood alone upon the edge of the firmament. He looked down upon the earth, at the cities flickering with small lights of prayer, at the people who would never know how close they came to being ashes. He should have felt peace, but deep within him, something ached, as though every act of compassion came with its own cross to bear. He felt it, a darkness watching him from afar, a coldness that did not belong to heaven. He knew what it was. He didn't need to look to recognize that shadow. It was the same voice that had fallen once, and now waited for all others to do the same. Lucifer. And though the angel had no name in human tongues, in that moment, the enemy gave him one. The fool of mercy. Heaven watched in silence. The other angels dared not speak, because they could feel it too. The fragile balance between mercy and wrath now swayed by a single act of love. And though God had not rebuked the angel, every being knew the truth. This mercy would come with consequences, because mercy always does. Have you ever done something right and suffered for it anyway? Have you ever stood between two worlds trying to save one and lost peace with the other? That was him, an angel torn between the will of heaven and the need of earth, between love and law. And while he looked upon creation with trembling hope, the darkness beneath smiled, because mercy had delayed the end, but the storm was far from over. Heaven was silent, not in anger, not in thunder, just silent. The angel stood beneath that silence like a man beneath a collapsing sky. Every whisper of wind carried questions he could no longer answer. Every ray of light that touched his wings felt colder than it used to. When mercy had flowed through him, it had felt divine, but now it felt like a wound that would not heal. He had saved the earth, yet heaven's doors seemed to drift farther away. The other angels no longer spoke his name. They watched him, yes, but their gazes were heavy with things they could not say. Was it admiration? Was it sorrow? Or was it the quiet warning that every angel knows, that even good intentions can echo like rebellion? He walked through the halls of heaven, past rivers of light that once sang with joy. Now their waters whispered slower, dimmer. The thrones stood still. The choirs had grown hushed. And though the golden air still shimmered, it carried a strange, aching stillness, like the moment after a storm when the world realizes what it has lost. He could no longer hear the song that once burned within him, the melody that made him soar. It was gone, buried under the weight of questions that heaven did not answer. He fell to his knees before the throne, the very place where light was born. But even there, he could not feel it anymore. "Father," he whispered, his voice breaking into the silence, "did I do wrong by showing mercy?" No voice answered, only light. And yet even that light seemed distant, like the glow of a dying star, beautiful but unreachable. He pressed his forehead to the floor of heaven, his tears vanishing into its brilliance. Heaven did not punish him, but neither did it comfort him, and that was worse. Far below on earth, the winds carried peace again. Children laughed. The sun rose without blood in its light. Life continued, unaware that the cost of its survival was being paid in silence above. The angel looked down upon them, his heart breaking with every breath of their joy. He should have been glad, but he wasn't. Because mercy isn't free. It costs something from the one who gives it, and heaven had taken it from him. His wings, once white as dawn, began to dim slightly, as though even light itself questioned whether it belonged to him anymore. And somewhere, far beneath the stars, Lucifer watched, smiling faintly. He didn't need to attack. He didn't need to whisper temptation. He only needed to wait, because the angel's silence would do the work for him. Heaven remained unmoved. No thunder, no word, just stillness, deep, unending, divine. And so the angel whispered to himself, "If mercy makes me fall, then let me fall. But I would rather fall for compassion than rise through cruelty." His voice cracked, but there was strength in his breaking, because love, even when lonely, is still holy. And though heaven said nothing, the stars and far away us began to flicker again. Perhaps God was not silent in anger. Perhaps he was silent in grief. Heaven summoned him, not with fire, not with wrath, but with a silence that was heavier than any command. He stood before the council of thrones, where eternity itself seemed to breathe. Columns of light rose like mountains, and voices of many waters echoed in the distance. Here, the greatest of angels, the watchers, the seraphim, and the archangels, gathered not to celebrate, but to judge. And at the center, beneath the endless radiance of God's throne, he knelt, not as a sinner, not as a hero, just as one who didn't know whether mercy was still holy. One of the elders spoke first, his voice calm, like the edge of a blade wrapped in silk. "You stopped the end of all thing," he said. "Do you know what you've done?" The angel raised his eyes, trembling. "I spared what still had breath," he whispered. "I saw light still flickering in the darkness. I thought perhaps it was worth saving." Another voice thundered, deeper, older. "Did God command you?" The angel paused. His throat tightened. "No." "Then by what authority," the elder pressed, "did you delay his decree?" The question hung like a storm in the golden air. Even heaven's light seemed to dim. And yet, there was no anger in the angel's eyes, only sorrow. "I didn't stop his will," he said softly. "I begged for more time to understand it." The chamber stirred, ripples of surprise, even fear, because no one had ever spoken so gently, yet struck so deep. He continued, his voice breaking. "I saw what judgment would do. The fire, the terror, the end of every dream that ever whispered your name. And I thought, if you could bear the cross for man once, then maybe heaven could bear a little waiting." A silence so deep fell over the council that even the stars outside seemed to stop burning. For the first time, Angels who had never questioned anything, questioned everything. Then Michael, the warrior of God, the blade of heaven, stepped forward. His armor glowed with divine light, his face unreadable. "You pity those who curse his name," Michael said. "You pity those who kill, who lie, who forget. You pitied them. Do you not know the cost of mercy?" The angel looked up at him, eyes weary, wings trembling. "Yes," he said, "I do. I'm paying it right now." The words struck like lightning, but not to destroy, only to awaken. Even Michael's eyes softened, because in that moment, he saw something pure in the brokenness, something that reminded him of the God they both served. Then the voice of God filled the heavens. No thunder, no flame, just light, so pure it hurt to look at. "Child of light," he said, "why did you stand between my hand and the world I made?" The angel's voice trembled. "Because, Father, you gave me love, and I couldn't bear to see what you love die." He bowed his head, expecting fire, but none came. Instead, a wind passed through heaven, gentle, endless, alive, and the light dimmed as though even God was weeping. The throne spoke once more. "Mercy is not disobedience, but mercy given without understanding must be refined. You have stayed my hand, not by power but by love, and love will now be tested." The angel's wings glowed faintly again, but this time the light came with pain, a pain that burned through every feather, every breath. "You will walk among them," God said. "You will know the weight of what you saved. You will live where your mercy fell, and only then will you understand if it was worth it." The council bowed, the heavens trembled, and before the angel could speak, light engulfed him, a torrent of grace and sorrow entwined. And then, silence again. He was gone. The angel who stopped the apocalypse was cast down, not in punishment, but in purpose. When he opened his eyes, the light was gone. No choirs, no radiance, no endless sky of gold. Only the wind, cold, sharp, and human. He lay in a barren field, the earth damp beneath his hands. Rain fell softly, washing over his face like tears that heaven could no longer shed. And when he tried to rise, pain tore through him. The kind of pain angels were never meant to feel. He looked over his shoulder and saw nothing. His wings were gone. Only faint scars shimmered where they had been. 2 lines of fading light, pulsing weakly against his back. And for the first time in eternity, he felt small, mortal, breakable, alone. He walked for days, barefoot and silent, across lands that bore the scars of man's cruelty. Wars carved into the soil, hunger etched into children's faces, and grief painted across the eyes of mothers who had forgotten hope. And with every step he understood. Heaven had shown him the beauty of creation, but earth showed him its pain. He saw people curse God in their sorrow. He saw them steal, betray, and destroy. He saw them pray in the dark, whispering to a silence that never seemed to answer. And yet, he also saw a woman share her last piece of bread with a stranger. He saw a child kneel beside a broken wall and whisper, "God, please keep my mother safe." He saw a man carry his dying friend through the desert because he couldn't leave him behind. And that was when the angel understood. This was the light he had fought for. Not perfection, but persistence. Not purity, but love that refuses to die, even when the world does everything to kill it. One night, he collapsed beneath a dead tree, trembling from exhaustion. He pressed his palms to the ground and whispered, "Father, I see them now. I see what you saw. They're not lost. They're trying." He waited. Nothing. Only the wind answered, a faint echo that felt almost compassionate. He closed his eyes and smiled weakly. Maybe heaven was listening after all. Maybe silence was God's way of letting him learn to hear differently. But the world is not kind to fallen angels. He was found by men, soldiers, who saw only a stranger with glowing scars and eyes that shimmered faintly in the dark. They bound his hands. They mocked him. They asked where his miracles were. He said nothing. For days he was beaten and starved, and still he prayed for them, quietly in the dark. He whispered, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are breaking." And somehow, even through the pain, he began to smile, because he finally understood something that even angels struggle to grasp. Love isn't proven in heaven, it's proven in suffering. One morning, when the soldiers left him tied beneath the burning sun, a child came, small, frail, eyes full of wonder. She gave him water. She untied his ropes, and as he looked into her eyes, he saw it again. That spark, that flicker of unexplainable goodness that refused to die. He touched her hand gently. "Why did you help me?" he asked. She shrugged, smiling shyly. "Because you look like someone God forgot to save." The angel's heart shattered, and for the first time he wept openly, not for himself, but for the beauty of that innocence. A child's mercy had freed the one who had stopped the apocalypse. He traveled with her for many days, and as he did, the world that once terrified him became something sacred. He saw kindness in hunger, laughter in ruins, and forgiveness in faces that had no reason left to hope. And then, one night beneath a sky full of fading stars, he felt it again, that same divine pulse he once knew in heaven. But this time, it came from within. He realized that God had not exiled him. He had been sent to see with eyes that had once only gazed at glory, now forced to look upon the dirt, the blood, the tears, and find God there too. As dawn broke, the child asked, "Will you go back home someday?" The angel smiled faintly. "I think I already am." And as he spoke, the wind carried something soft, a voice distant but clear. "Well done, my child." He looked up. The stars began to shimmer brighter, and faintly, light began to gather around his shoulders. Not full wings, not yet, just light, a promise. And so the angel walked on, not to rule, not to judge, but to love the world he had once tried to save from afar. Because sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't stopping the end of the world. It's learning to love it enough to start again.